Hello and welcome to On Point. I'm Gloria Alas. Los Angeles topped the list of the world's most gridlocked cities for the 6th year in a row. Today we are talking about, you guessed it, traffic congestion in Los Angeles. According to the NREX traffic scorecard, the average person spends 102 hours stuck in traffic during rush hour. LA Metro public transportation has been around for more than 25 years. Metro has worked over the years to plan and implement new projects to help traffic congestion. We spoke to some commuters who would rather use public transportation, but say it takes too long.
It's a little busy and crazy in here, but I would rather do that than sit in traffic all day.
Like I used to work in Koreatown, and at night I would have to wait like 30-minute intervals for the new subway to come, and sometimes it would be over 30 minutes. I'll be waiting for the train to come for like 40 minutes.
The public transportation stretches and covers a more wide trajectory, and then because New York is so compact, it works a little bit more efficiently when it comes to just getting on the train and going.
Currently, there are several projects under construction and 40 more in the works. On Point's Amezcua has more on the story.
Thank you, Gloria. Today I'm joined with Naresh Amatya. He is the transportation manager of SCAG. Also with me today is Jacquelyn Dupont-Walker. She is a Metro board member, as well as Dave Perry. He is the policy deputy for County Supervisor Catherine Barger. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. So LA has one of the worst traffic in the country, and one of the first questions we'd like to ask is, how did we get here? So I would like to begin with you, Naresh, if it's okay.
Well, again, Naresh Amatya with Southern California Association of Governments. It's shortly SCAG. SCAG is the regional planning agency that plans for the 6-county region of Southern California. And transportation is our core issue. And transportation has always been a big challenge especially in urbanized parts of our region. There is a host of reasons why we have such a horrendous traffic, including disparity between jobs and housing balances, where people live and where people work, and also just the sheer number of people that live in this region, and the fact that our infrastructure is really overburdened with the number of people that we have in the region.
If I could give a bit of a historical perspective.
Sure.
I was not here, but history tells me, and we do have a wonderful archive at LA Metro, that in the 50s we had the most advanced public transportation system in the country, and probably in the 40s. And as a result of the war, the new owners of the public transportation system, because they weren't able to maintain it, were in the gas and rubber business, and a la the birth of the automobile. And this very advanced network dissipated, and many of the rail systems are still in place. In fact, we have one station, the red car station, which is still at 103rd. And from that, people began to think of themselves as individuals. So when I moved here in '74, SCAG was talking about a regional transportation system, and we're just now being able to think about the regionalization of transportation and how we impact each other. So we have been singularly in our vehicles and our other modes of transportation without embracing public transportation, and that's what LA Metro hopes that we're bringing back to relieve the congestion that is so obvious.
Dave,
yeah, a lot of those lines ended up getting paved over.
Yes.
However, some of them still remained, and we've, I guess you could say, repurposed them.
Yes.
Metro has repurposed some of them back into transit lines, and it's really about moving forward, leaving this place better than how we found it. The supervisor always talks about leaving it better for the next generation. So that's what we're in the market to do now.
This probably might be a question for you, Jacquelyn. How did Los Angeles develop differently than, for example, Chicago or New York or San Francisco with such a diverse transit system?
I'm not quite sure, but what we do know is that we now claim we're no longer number 3, but we're pushing number 1 in terms of the public transportation system because we are very clear about the maintenance of our vehicles and about promoting all modalities from walking to high-speed rail. I believe that in the older cities that are much more compact, the public transportation system has been embraced for longer periods of time than here, as we tend to spread out. And so as Metro then begins to develop this new net, then we believe that we will have the same percentage of persons riding public transportation as the other cities on the east and in the Middle West. So Los Angeles, I think, with the promotion of the automobile, developed very differently, but public transportation continued to be the main mode of moving from one spot to the next.
Naresh, would you like to add it?
Well, a little bit of, again, history here is that we've come a long way, actually, in a very short period of time. If you think about it, prior to 1990, we didn't have any rail system to speak about in Los Angeles area. Since the operation of Red Line, which was really the first operating rail system in the city. But again, a little bit of a history is prior to 1960s, there was a streetcar system that served the region well. But for whatever reason back then, because the priorities were different, land use was different, streetcar was totally abandoned. And so for the next 30 years or so, we didn't have a rail system to speak about. And so since the 1960s, we've expanded the rail system in a very rapid pace. In fact, so much so that I don't think there's any other city that compares to Los Angeles in terms of how far we've come in such a short period of time.
I'm curious that your history started with the Red Line instead of the Blue Line. And I do know that Congressman Julian Dixon, whose passion we embrace in creating public transportation, brought the funds for the Red Line. But I'm curious that you didn't say Blue Line was our first.
I think they were about the same time.
Blue was our first. We celebrated, yeah. I think it's not the same quality of rail that we have for Red. But
yeah,
New Blue is being renovated. And so look forward to the New Blue, which will come. It embraces the city of Los Angeles, the unincorporated areas, Compton, all the way to Long Beach. So it's one of the stars, we hope.
It is going through a big rehabilitation right now,
yes.
which is much needed.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, I understand. I believe parts of the stations are closed for renovation.
Yes, the south end is closed, and then after that has been restored, then the north end will be closed. My favorite station is Rosa Parks.
How so? Why is?
Well, because Rosa Parks, I think, is a very important symbol in public transportation. We know that on December 1st, 1955, she refused to move from her seat, which opened the country to looking at equity in public transportation. So I look at her as a symbol. And so when the Rosa Parks station then becomes the center, it's one of the major transfer centers on our rail system. And I think it helps us always remember that equality and equity is important, public transportation is important for people from all walks of life, that it is the connector and what brings our communities together.
Dave, would you like to tag on to that? Or?
I think the director did a phenomenal job summarizing that.
All right, let's go on to, I believe, the 28 projects that Metro has lined up for the 2028 Olympics. Can we start with, what was one of the largest ones that you know of, Jacquelyn?
Well, I'm going to let him name them.
Okay.
But the person, a board member, who perceived that is Mayor Eric Garcetti.
Right.
And as you know, he invested a lot of energy into trying to get the Olympics by 2024. But being the conciliator that he is, when we were offered the opportunity to have 2028, he accepted it. He has, from the beginning of his first term, indicated that while many people look at the city of LA as 1 plus 87, that he sees the city of LA as one among the 88 cities. And so he has convened the mayors together, and so the 28 by 28 plan embraces the entire county. It's an effort to put some of the key projects not ahead of the commitment we made in Measure M, but to highlight them in case there are additional resources that can help to move them forward. So that by 2028, both for the Olympics and the Paralympics, that we will have a net of rail systems that you mentioned before in place. Not forgetting the 71% or 70% of our ridership, the 1 million a day, happen to be in our bus network. And so the 28 by 28 seeks to bring all that together to invite public, private partnerships in order to make the system work. But there are many projects, and if I dare name any, someone will say that's the mayor's favorite. So I'll let you do that.
Public-private partnerships are going to be critical. In the 28 by 2028 plan, 20 of those projects fit within that 2028 timeline. So the question before the Metro Board right now is how to advance those 8. And that's, we've unpacked, or we're beginning to unpack many conversations about how you can move those forward. In the San Fernando Valley, though, you're looking at the East San Fernando Valley light rail project. You're looking at the Sepulveda Pass, which is obviously a very big project, very big deal for the thousands and thousands of commuters every day that are going through the 405 corridor. We have NoHo to Pasadena, BRT connector. So yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in there. And now we're, like I said, just the directors are just starting to unpack these conversations about, okay, how do you accelerate those 8 to get them here before the Olympics?
Naresh, would you like to add on?
I think Dave summarized it pretty well. Sepulveda Pass includes express lanes on
Sepulveda Pass.
Sepulveda Pass. And the 405 corridor includes express lanes on 405 as a part of the mix of the solutions as well.
That is clearly considered one of the biggest challenges that we have. I want the public to just be assured that the commitments we made under Measure M remain in place. There's an oversight committee that ensures that, but to the degree that public-private partnerships can be put in place, then projects can hopefully move forward simultaneously. Our challenge would be to move around the basin if they all move at the same time.
All right.
Good point.
And how will we get LA residents to get back on the transit system? I understand that ridership is going down over the past couple of years.
Well, I think you have to put that in context.
Mm-hmm.
If you could identify a system where ridership and public transportation in the U.S. is not going down, I'd like for you to share it with me. Mm-hmm. It is happening. It's a national trend and local. We have an approach to take a look at that. But we also are looking at some areas and municipal areas where they've taken steps and ridership is coming up to really review their routes. And so in Houston and Seattle, we see that happening. That brings us to what we're calling the next gen study here, where after 30 years, we're reviewing the bus routes. And so anyone who wants the bus to stop in front of their home should probably take the survey. If you want it next door in the neighborhood, take the survey. Get all of your neighbors together at the block club and take the survey. Because we want to ensure that our buses are not going places where people no longer need them, and where people need them, we want our buses to be there. So the Next Gen study is going to give us a full view to a system that will match the net that's set in place with our trains.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for right now. So,
well, we're also going to look at safety and security.
Okay.
Because that's a perception that there is some lack of safety with public transportation, and here in Los Angeles, under the leadership of Phil Washington, our CEO, and our newly minted Director of Security, this is a first such job, we have a multi-agency approach on the system. So in the city of LA, it's LAPD. In the city of Long Beach, it's Long Beach. And for the rest of the county, it's the County Sheriff's Department. And so we have those departments working together carefully, which increases response time in case there is a crisis on the bus. And it's very important. We want every rider to feel safe and secure as they do that. We're also taking a look at the new modalities that are put in place. Obviously, Uber and Lyft have made a difference. The first mile, last mile, whether it's the scooter or walking, or some of the other 26 transit lines that people connect to get to the metro vehicles. We want that to be a seamless transfer. And so we believe that ridership, if we put that in place, is important. We are very mindful of equity. And so the discount opportunities, whether it's UPass for the college students or the low-income discounts for families that have economic challenges, we want to keep in place so that people have an equal opportunity to use public transportation that is affordable and safe and efficient.
Well, I want to thank all my guests for being here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, and thank you for spreading the word.
Thank you.
This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Remember that to love America is to love all Americans, because love has no labels.
Welcome back. I'm now joined with Dave Sotero. He is the spokesman for Metro, as well as Yvette Lopez-Ledesma. She is the professor of urban studies and planning. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's jump right in. Obviously, LA has some of the worst traffic that we have here, and I want to hear what you have to basically, will it have to get worse before it gets better for that?
Well, I think it will get worse if we do nothing. Congestion is bad now, but it's going to be bad in the decades ahead. We spend about 81 hours in a year in traffic, and that's only going to increase. We're going to get more population in the county. We're expecting probably 750,000 people to come into the LA County area in the next decade, but 2.4 million people within the next 40 years. So it's going to be increasingly important for us all to find other ways to get around LA besides the single passenger automobile. And that's our challenge. But fortunately, we have the largest public works program in the country, and we're addressing those transportation challenges today. We're taking a long view. We're looking out over 30 years to see the things that we can do to help keep people moving in the county, but it's going to take everyone's participation in finding alternative ways to get around.
Yvette, would you like to add on?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we're definitely on a good pace to one, not only plan some projects that can hopefully, lessen everyone's commute time, should we choose the transit option. And I think that's part of the work that's happening right now, through Metro, MetroLink, even just, different transportation departments throughout the city, throughout the county, just really putting the message out there and trying to develop a culture of transit ridership, and understanding that, now it's on us to try and right some of the wrongs of the past, hopefully no longer build freeways, for cars or car-centric streets, but really try and promote mass transit in our city. We have recently passed a Measure M, successfully here in LA County, which is bringing us, the opportunity to think big and creative and make bold steps in investing in our transit system. And so while, we are seeing population growth faster than we're seeing, some things being able to be developed, I think that, we all kind of just come together and work together and support these projects and really start to find ways in which we can maybe leave our car behind, walk to more places. It all starts there. So it's not like a one-shot solution to the problem, but multi-pronged for sure.
So let's go back to the Valley. What projects are we expected here, for example, for Valley residents? Let's start with you, Dave.
Well, one of the more exciting projects is the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project. That's going to provide a high-capacity transit line that will connect the San Fernando Valley with the west side and ultimately connect with LAX. So it's a really big, important project. And right now we're looking at various concepts and refining those concepts. But if you're able to make that transit connection in about 15 to 26 minutes with the concepts we're looking at, as opposed to 110 minutes on the freeway slogging through the Sepulveda Pass, you can see how we are making a dramatic difference in people's commute times. And when you do that, you do start to see the shift away from the automobile towards other transit modes that can save people time. And that's really what we're focused on for all of our transit projects. This particular one is very exciting, and we hope to complete it by 2028. We're looking at a potential public-private partnership to build that line. But as you mentioned, we do have other transit lines in the Valley as well, where we're going to be bringing a light rail line to the Valley, with the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor. That will connect with the Sepulveda Transit Corridor project in either Van Nuys or on Van Nuys or Sepulveda. So that line also, it's going to be a local line in the valley that people can use. And as everybody that lives in the valley knows, Van Nuys Boulevard is one of the busiest corridors outside of the Orange Line. So it's going to do a lot of good to give people other travel choices.
Yvette, would you like to?
Yeah, I'm super excited about the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor. I think that one, not only is it an example of how Metro can really fill a real need, because the East San Fernando Valley, which if you're not familiar with it, areas like Pacoima, San Fernando, Silmar, are very transit dependent. And so these are the places where we need to be investing, where we already have an existing base of users, to make sure that we are also facilitating their mobility needs, right? And that we are bringing them these investments, which have been needed for such a long time. So I'm really excited about that. And a lot of people that tend to work in that, that tend to live over there in the Northeast Valley. I live in Pacoima, Arleta, so similar area. A lot of us, we work in other parts of LA, and so it's really important to be connected to the rest of LA. And so that project in particular is one that I'm really excited about.
Let's go back to what you mentioned earlier, Measure M. Could you explain to our viewers what Measure M is?
Sure. I'll do my best. But it was a tax measure that we voted on in LA County in 2016 that was supported by about, I'm going to say, 75% of the voters across LA County. And so what that did was, yes, it put a sales tax out there that we all now pay, when we purchase things out here in LA County. But that dollar, the cents go back to transit investments, which in the end help all of us, because we're all trying to get around in this city, right? And so we all want better transit. So Measure M, it's also what's going to allow for a lot of these projects to be built. And so it's really exciting when we start to think about 2028, as we're talking about 2028 here, so much more transit than we currently have is going to come because of that investment. And so it's also something that people all over the country look to, too, as an example of wow, LA did that, wow, that's great, So yeah, that's, if you feel free to add anything that I may have missed.
I think it was actually 71% of the voters voted for Measure M, so it was an overwhelming majority of voters that saw the value of building transit in the car capital of the world and fixing some of these major challenges that we have, like the Sepulveda Pass. It's one of the worst congestion bottlenecks in the entire Southern California area. But that particular program she's referring to it's 40 projects in 40 years. And so you can just see the magnitude of this effort and how important it is to keep people moving. And in the San Fernando Valley, there's a lot of projects that are funded through that sales tax measure. I wanted to mention one other one. It's the North Valley BRT project, and that's providing a premium east-west transit line like the Orange Line that will connect with CSUN and also connect, we're looking at options to connect at Silmar, San Fernando, and also in North Hollywood. So it's going to do a lot of good in the northern part of the San Fernando Valley to connect students and other residents with the expanding transit system throughout the county. And really the connections are really what gives people those alternatives to driving. The projects we're mentioning, they connect with the Silmar Metrolink station. They connect with the Orange Line in the valley. They connect with the west side transit lines that are in our future. And so it's all about connecting it, creating an integrated, connected transit network that gets people where they want to go.
What would we like to see happen in the next couple of years, especially if we're getting we might not be so close to 2028, but we're definitely getting there. What would we like to see? Yvette, want to speak on?
And I want to see an improved bus system, which I know Metro's also working on right now as well. I think there's still a lot of missing places that are missing the amount of transit that they really need, and maybe more frequent service. I think those are some things I would like to see. into that encourages a movement towards more transit, right? And really start to think about the experience of a transit rider, and that also it's not just up to one agency to have a hand in this. It's really about several agencies. So our cities, their departments, street services. It's not about just getting to a bus stop, but it's about what happens when you get to a bus stop. Is there shade there? Are you protected? Are you feeling like, are you safe? All of these things are going to help us to be able to get more people on transit, bus shelter, safety, frequency, and then they become, customers of the service, and then they start to think, hey, you know what, I can do this. I can leave my car behind and build that culture. That it's going to take time, but I'm such an optimist when it comes to this. I think it can happen. And I see it a lot with even the students that I work with on campus. I always ask, who takes transit? And there's a vast majority of students here that take transit. So that line, for example, the BRT, the Bus Rapid Transit, is going to be really great. It's going to really service a bunch of students and hopefully get them thinking about like, well, I don't need a car. What do I need a car for? I have transit, so it's good.
Dave, would you like to add on?
Well, I think what we really need is to reimagine Los Angeles County, reimagine the possibilities of moving around the county and having other choices besides solo driving. Most people, for all the trips that they make on a daily basis, they're driving behind the wheel alone in a car. So that has to change if we're ever going to have a chance to improve the conditions in our county, because we have too many people and too many cars. So the future is bright. We have the funding in place to make a lot of improvements. We just have to have the imagination. We have to reimagine where we want to go and work together to get there.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. You can watch us on Santa Clarita Valley Television on Sundays at 5 in the afternoon, and on LA 36 Thursday evenings at 8 and Saturday afternoons at 2:30. For all of us here at On Point, I'm Gloria Alas. Until next time.